Today's guest is someone who lives with curiosity on full blast. Katie Mills is a senior level HR leader who brings nearly 2 decades of people first experience to the table, and she's still fascinated by the human side of leadership. From multi-industry strategy to the quirky dynamics of everyday teams, Katie sees every moment as a chance to learn, connect, and grow. So let's dive in. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a 4-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome back to a fresh episode of Cultivate. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming a dynamic senior level HR leader who lives in the land of curiosity. Katie Mills, I am thrilled to have you join us for the Cultivate Experience.
I am thrilled to be here, Wendy. Let's do this.
We are going to have a blast because we already have had a blast. Green room time has been a wow with Katie, and you will be wowed as well. So let's just dive in because the time will just fly by. Okay. There's that moment, personal, professional, that shaped the approach of your leadership today. We know that every leader has a why. What's that for you?
I would have to say that my why and my motivation for showing up every day is the people, the employees. I get my energy from being around other people. And the fact that I'm in a position where I can be a source of guidance or support in any way it just feeds my soul. Now, I can't say that every day is easy, but it's definitely not boring when people are involved, which, because of that, I'm constantly being challenged and learning something new. So it's the people for me.
And I love that because I think, and we'll get into this, there's some misconceptions about human resources. I know that's going to shock everyone. But that component, people are messy. We're messy, right? And there's real life and all these things that are happening. To hear you say that that's the part that actually fills you, what's coming next. But I love that you also kept it very authentic. It's not that it's because it's easy, but it is rewarding.
It is.
Right? And here at the Cultivate Experience, we believe that it is that relational leadership, that component of being together in it, right? That's where we get grounded in who we are, that self-awareness and being authentic. You said this. You said it to me. You just said it to the audience. People fascinate you.
Yes.
I love that. What's something that recently made you pause and think, well, that was a human moment?
Oh my. Goodness, there's so many to choose from as far as just baffling moments. Just to generalize it, I think, what fascinates me about people is that what is normal for one person is completely bizarre to the next. I find myself often thinking, and, it's all in the approach. It's all in the tone of how you speak with people. So, if it's a negative situation, I don't want to rub their nose in it. If they're doing something bad, but it's constantly in my mind. I just want to look and say, what were you thinking? What made you do that? Where, just walk me through. How did you get there? There's, like I said, Wendy, there's too many, memories to choose from as far as nailing down a specific incident, but they all have that common denominator where I'm just like, walk me through why we're here right now. What's going through that mind? So yeah,
the fact that you can do that with a straight, I can't, because we all know it. We have these conversations, and whether it's in our family and whether it's in the workplace, I love where you started that, right? We're going to get to the fact that you are so curious.
Yes.
And hey, help me, not what were you, like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But help me get to where you got.
Exactly.
But you started with what is normal for one totally opposite for the other.
Right.
And so you've got to come into the space, recognize, like, that's the lens that you've got to walk this out in, which is that human factor. You've worked across industries, multiple companies, different sizes. What patterns do you see about what people need at work that really leaders often overlook or miss? Do you see patterns in that space?
So I feel that, I mean, everybody's different, everybody's motivated differently, people have different priorities, people, look for different things to get out of a job or put into a job. But I think that employees, do have one thing in common in that they just want to be heard. They want to feel valued. They want to feel a part of something. They want to be recognized. I'm a big proponent of employee recognition, employee engagement. Because, if they have a manager that is, just giving them nothing but negative feedback, no recognition, employee recognition, it goes a long way. A pat on the back goes such a long way because, once that is said, that employee is guaranteed to continue to go above and beyond because they feel like, well, somebody's noticing, I'm a part of something. I'm making a difference. Anybody can be trained to do a job, but culture is very important. Leadership, the relational leadership, that's very important because that kind of sets the tone. You want the employee to feel valued. You also want them to feel comfortable enough to be able to let the leader know, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or can you teach me this again? Or, hey, I messed up. I'm not, I completely blew it. I always try to say the employees, they don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers. So I think as long as an employee is in a space where they're feeling heard, they're feeling rewarded, recognized. I think those are common patterns that employees seek, anyways, in the workplace.
And I couldn't agree more. And you said it so well. Like, that's currency, to be able to be seen and heard. Right? We talk about benefits and we want to know the package. That's something that's not listed, right? But it is so important. Yes. And to your point, why someone will say, maybe this is just not the place for me.
Right.
You mentioned the fact of we don't just want to hear what I'm not doing or what I need to fix or what could be better. But even if it's not that, right? Maybe you're checking the boxes in that space of the tasks that you have to take care of. But if you're still not hearing, so it's not negative, but if you're hearing nothing about what you are bringing to the table, man, doesn't matter. If it's not me, it could be someone. Am I invisible?
Right.
Right. And so I think that you emphasize such an important place that can, if not intentional, a leader can really overlook. And that's where I want to go next. Now, I chuckled over the fact of how you were saying, like, what made you think that? So we don't need to get into the specifics, right? We just like people are people and sometimes they people.
Right. Right.
How do you take that? One person finds something bizarre, the other finds it normal. How do you take that mindset and help that navigate conversation with managers that you're working with, who are coming to you and like, what the what? How do you have that conversation to help them get to the place where you are, or even senior leadership when they go, how many times are you going to turn this position over?
Right.
What does that look like?
So I feel that, communication is key. Everybody communicates differently. So for some people it comes very easy, but what's so easy for you and I to see might not be so obvious to the next person. So I think communicating, one of communication is key. I'll say it again because I'm a big proponent.
Yes.
But one of the things that I love about HR so much is mentoring and coaching my managers, because, these are the things that I like to hammer into them. You need to be meeting with your people, meet with your teams, meet with your departments, meet, one-on-one, depending on the nature of the department, whether it's marketing or sales or, engineering, computing, things like that. They need to develop a rapport with their employees to understand that, hey, Wendy, I know I can tell Wendy this and she's going to run with it. She's not going to need a lot of oversight. But Katie, on the other hand, she's going to need, kind of some check-ins, if you will. She's going to need to be checked on. So I think, it's all about establishing a rapport with your employees, getting that communication down and just knowing what your employee needs and kind of, clarifying expectations. A lot of time, if there's a project going on, people might get lost in the details. I'm one of those people, I tend to get overwhelmed at times because I just say, yes, I can help you with that. Yes, I'll take that on. Yes, and yes, and yes. And then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how do I prioritize? I can't let anybody down. I've taken on too much. So once you've established good communication with your individual employees, then you can alleviate some of those troubles ahead as far as, why isn't this getting done? Why is she acting this way? Why are they, their performance slipping, things like that.
No, and so well said. And you did. You said the word communication, I don't know, 14 times in that little segment, because it is that important. And we know that. We know that about any relationship. That is what is at its core if we're going to be successful in that relationship or it's going to be a disaster, right? Because are we talking over each other? Has someone even, been heard in that space? Right. And what do I need to hear versus how you need to hear it? And you made that point so well. Those check-ins, those one-on-ones, let's also, and I know you've got to be saying this to your manager, I love that you're coaching them because that shows that partnership between human resources and right? I'm not just here to help you sift through some resumes. Yeah. I'm here for the long haul in the partnership. I love that because they are in the depths and the throes of the tasks in the day in and day out. Those meetings between their teammates and themselves, those meetings belong to the teammate. Right. I'm not their meeting. Right. Those agendas are theirs. And how can they support them in that space so that they do know they have that safe space to have that voice? Yeah, love how you painted that picture. You have this beautiful space that I think that you sit in, and just the way you speak of it, of how your love of people and of course managers and teammates, they all fit in that space, and leadership. What do you think in the world that you've been in with HR and talking and working with so many HR leaders and just executive leaders? What's that underrated trait that leaders kind of like, is it really that important?
Everybody's got different strengths. Some people, have no problem getting up and speaking in front of people. Other people, can't put together a PowerPoint or or Excel whizzes. So I think it's all about being challenged. Managers challenging their employees and employing employees in the same way, challenging their managers, because we only grow once we're uncomfortable. We don't know what we don't know. So it's things like, oh gosh, I've never done this before. It's daunting at first, but once you know it, you're like, gosh, that wasn't that bad. I mean, in my experience, I feel like the things that I'm most nervous about end up being, way easier than I anticipated. But on the flip side,
and to your point, I think, some of the most rewarding things come out of that space.
Yes. But on the flip side, there have been times where I'm like, oh, I can do that. I'll just wing it. And then I get up there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have prepared better. What was I thinking? Just because I've done this 100 times, your mind, you constantly you need to continue to polish yourself. You need to keep yourself sharp because, we're all aging. We're all slipping a little bit. So
stop it, Katie. That's a whole nother podcast.
I hate to say it out loud, but it is what it is. We're not, it so doesn't get any easier. So, but I think, as long as there's, again, communication, setting the expectations clearly, accepting challenges and accepting your mistakes, give good feedback with negative feedback. That was one of my favorite managers I ever had. We still keep in touch, and this has been over a decade ago. He would always start off with something positive, say, hey, I really like how you did this, but let's talk about how we can improve this part. And it just made the conversation so much easier because once you hear something bad, that's all you hear, so starting it off with something great or something positive really made a difference. So,
well, I love, and we know you and I are on the same page in so many different areas, but even just where I was going next, you took me there already, which is that relational leadership in action. You spoke it out. I was like, hey, give me an example. You don't even need the prompts. Here we go. Right. And you're talking about that leader who says, hey, I saw this, fantastic, and called you, into that space and said, and so because you can do this and you can walk this out,
let's look at this area that I know you can handle,
Mm-hmm.
and gave you that nudge, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a transformational part of that real relationship being built,
Mm-hmm.
and not this transaction space of just checking the
Right.
boxes of the work that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And because you experience that, that then pours out in the way that you are, walking alongside the leaders that you are pouring into,
Mm-hmm.
and those that you're side to side with. I love that. I love that. That's relational leadership in action.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know in this space, right? There are all of these components that we've talked about, and then there's this word that some of us really get nervous about: accountability. Right? Right? When you think about accountability in leadership, how do you then balance that place of compassion
Mm-hmm.
with making it very clear this is what needs to get done?
So that makes me think of how crucial, well, I associate accountability with dependability.
Mm.
And it's when I think of accountability, I think of how job descriptions, how crucial job descriptions are, because that right there outlines the expectations of the job, the requirements. And of course, they're going to change from time to time. There's going to be stuff that, you're no longer doing, or that might be, or, that might be added on to your role. Um, but I think accountability, it's again, I'll go back to communication. You need to make sure that your employee knows, or your manager knows, what is expected of them. Because if you're holding them accountable for things that they don't even realize they're responsible for, that's a huge disconnect. And I think that falls on, me as the creator of the job description, or maybe, working with the manager to help me
Mhm.
list the responsibilities on there. So I think accountability, it comes from the expectations. Why is this person accountable? Do they know that they were held account, or that they're responsible for this? Because you can't really fault them if this was never told to them. And I try to be very fair, with HR. There's always uncomfortable conversations, where
Yes.
people get in trouble, and, it's like, well, you knew this would happen. Well, did they know this was going to happen? Had this been told to you? So I think, accountability comes with communication, and again, setting out clear expectations, clarifying the role, updating the roles, or excuse me, updating the job descriptions, things like that.
You said it. I love the accountability. It's equals dependability,
Mhm.
right? Like I think that that's a beautiful piece that we cannot overlook.
Mhm.
I speak on this all the time as far as the expectations,
Mhm.
right? Someone, it has to be clear. And then there's got to be opportunity to have that conversation, right?
Mhm.
If we're not having regular meeting times, and if we haven't created space where we can have dialogue around, why do we do it this way? Is there an opportunity to look at it different? Especially when we're talking about folks who are on the front line, who are doing it day in and day out.
Mhm.
And because the further we are removed from that task or that opportunity, we may not be able to see where clearly those heading points are, right?
Mhm.
Where those speed bumps are. And so I love that piece of, well, I want to depend on you, and there's where the accountability comes in. And it is not to keep tabs on, right?
Right.
And that it is a mutual responsibility
Right.
that I am clear as a manager, as a leader, as a company,
Mhm.
to make it clear this is who we are. Almost the core of what we've been talking about here today, and where that communication is so critical and so important.
Mhm.
You mentioned messy, hard. We're not always here celebrating and talking about the wins. Hard conversations. Human resources has to initiate so many of
Yep.
those. Not specifics. They're brevity. But when you think about hard conversations that you've had to initiate, how did you step into those? And then were you grateful that you actually did?
Yes.
Did you find gratitude in that space?
Yes. Again, because I love a challenge, because, it can be daunting at first, but that's how I grow. If I've never done it, then, I'm not going to learn from it. So I think back to when I was first in HR, and it was a, kind of a manufacturing environment. So, dealt with a lot of, blue collar employees,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of turnover. And, I had to have an uncomfortable conversation about a person's hygiene, actually. And it was uncomfortable, because I'm the new HR person. I've never met this person before. I'm having to do it over the phone. So I don't even have that personal, this guy's thinking, who is this lady talking to me? She doesn't even know me. But, I prepared for it and, just kind of got myself in the headspace that how would I want to be talked to? How would, just I just tried to relate, tried to, treat the other person how I would want to be treated. I'm not going to, I'm going to be very respectful. I'm going to come at it gently. And I was very nervous about it. But it turned out okay. The guy got defensive at first, but then afterwards he was like, I'm sorry that I snapped at you earlier, but this is uncomfortable, but I appreciate you being so respectful. I appreciate you not, bringing anybody else on the line with us. And, I appreciate your suggestions and, I appreciate you, telling me that this is not going to leave us or, this is not going anywhere outside of us. So it was something that, I was so nervous going into it because it's an uncomfortable conversation. But
yes.
The fact that he was so appreciative of how maybe he saw that I was nervous, so he was like, you know what, I get it. This is uncomfortable for both of us. But I think, it just reminded me, just be respectful, treat others. You never know what somebody is going through outside of work. We're all dealing with stuff that we're not bringing to work. So I think I always go back to that whenever I'm nervous about having a conversation is just be respectful. Just talk to them how I would want somebody to speak to me in that situation.
And I have to say, one of the things that strikes me about that story that you shared is you're like, I didn't even know them. We didn't have any personal relationship.
Right.
We're doing this over the phone. But you went to the one thing that you did have in common.
Mm-hmm.
You're both humans.
Yeah.
And that was going to be really hard for anyone to have to hear, right? And who wouldn't be defensive over and I think because you came with that authenticity, that's what he picked up on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't HR's coming down on me. You didn't jump to conclusions as to why you don't want to. And those were the places and spaces that you could find the common ground so that you could have that conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, that and the fact that you said you'll have a good challenge. Boy, now when you think about anything that you've got to do hard, was it as hard as that? Because that one was pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they vary. It depends. I mean, it's never easy to, I've had to do a lot of layoffs in various positions, a lot of terminations. I find that layoffs are probably way tougher in my opinion, just because it's not performance based. There's no reason, it's tough because it's, it's not specific. It's not fair. It's not deserving.
They can't fix. There's nothing I could have done to fix this.
Exactly. Whereas terminations, I mean, I don't mean this to sound cold hearted, but terminations are much easier because it's misconduct of somehow, it's a rule infraction. So therefore, I can justify it and say, we both know why you're here. Now this is happening because this and this and this, but layoffs are, they're way harder. I think that's probably the most difficult conversations to have.
Well, I've been on that side, so I would say yes. You're absolutely correct.
Yes.
Well, Katie, I know that you're a lifelong learner. That is not something like you love to be able to be stretched. You've said it. What's one area that you're presently, that intentionally working on, stretching yourself in your leadership?
I guess just better myself in all areas, whether it be speaking in front of a group of people, because one-on-ones I can do all day long. For small groups of people, I can work a room. I have no problem. But I think I'm good at that because I love the human aspect of it. That's close. You can relate right away. You're touching that person. You're touching the 10 other people in the room. But I think for me, it's, getting in front of a group of people and being able to stay on task while still connecting or making that connection with the people that, fuels that conversation and gets you through and keeps you on track. Maybe staying on task when I'm in front of groups of people, large groups of people, and not getting distracted by, if I do connect with, make eye contact, then I think like, oh, I know this person. Oh, let's talk afterwards. I'm like, no, I can't do that right now. What am I, stay on task, focus. So I think probably just, my public speaking, things along that nature. Mm-hmm.
Well, I love that because I don't think that anyone would think that, even in the short time that we've been together.
Really?
Right? And I know that we're feeling. Well, I wouldn't guess that at all. Like so the fact is, what you have recognized, right? I love that. That's a self-awareness there to say it's not that someone's come to you and said, "Hey, we really need to work on this."
Right.
But what I'm picking up from that is we've got to stay really in tune with. Okay, this is an area that I know I'm not as comfortable in. It's a challenge and a struggle. When I'm asked to do it, I'm like, oh, can it be someone else? Whatever that may be, and embracing that space and saying, okay, what steps can I take? Again, self-aware.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Plus, being vulnerable in that, right, and putting that out there and saying, hey, I don't have it all together in all the areas, because I think that's the other thing that we as leaders, I don't know, that either we bring that across, or we don't take the time in those one-on-one spaces to tell others, hey, I'm here to, speak in and call you up in this space because somebody's doing that for me, or this is what I'm walking through as well. So I really appreciate that.
Yes.
If you could whisper, or in our case, I think more so shout, one truth to every new manager stepping into their leadership for the very first time, what would that be?
I say be fair, be consistent, be kind, and just, I would say those three, if you could wrap all that into one, and be human. And I think consistency, probably if I had to take one from that, be consistent. Your manager sets the tone. If your manager comes in and they usually say, hey, Wendy, good morning. How are you? A little small talk. But then they just pass right by your door, you're immediately going to think, uh-oh, what's wrong? Have I done something? Are they upset with me? Or I wonder if so-and-so's in trouble. You're just going to spin out. So I think consistency in setting the tone as well.
When you said consistency, I'm like, that's the one. As soon as she pauses, I'm pulling that one because I feel like that, and you got there. I mean, all of those things are so important. But you wrapped it up so nicely, because if you're consistent, like you said, that in the kindness aspect of things, yes, in that tone, in expectation. So if we can hold to that, people want to know who you are, who's showing up, right? And to your point, wait, is it me? Is it them? Is it you? What's going on, right? And so I think that is a crucial and critical piece for those emerging leaders who are coming in, those who are like, okay, this is my first opportunity, or I want to step into an opportunity of leading others. That's going to be that superpower that you really, really want to lean into. So I can't believe it, but our time is almost up. Every time. Gets me every time. Wow. I want you to leave us. You've left us with so much. When we start, we're in some times. And I feel like we say that often. More
I agree.
Right? We're in some special times. And I do believe that as leaders, and in your case specifically, in this human space of the work that you're doing, we've got to bring hope to the situation of the special. What are you most hopeful about when it comes to this future of people cultivation and the work that we need to be doing together with everything that's changing? And what are you most hopeful about?
Ooh, that is tough. I am in the hot seat, Wendy. My goodness.
Because you can handle it. You can handle it.
Yeah. Okay. So hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can always do better. We can always improve. There's always going to be a new day. Every new day is full of new possibilities, and we're not promised tomorrow. So I think that what makes me most hopeful is that we can constantly be better. We can always improve. We can always do better. We can always be better. And I think that if we focus on ourselves and constantly trying to be better, then, you reap what you sow. Treat others how you would like to be treated, and realize that if somebody passes you and gives you a dirty look that you've never met them before, it's not about you. Kill them with kindness, because that person is having a bad day and it has nothing to do with you, because you two don't know each other. So just put that kindness out there and just, constantly just try to be better. Try to improve. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Katie, I told you could handle it. You could handle it because you took what was where's that hopeful space, right? And we're like looking for this massive answer. And I think you brought it. It's a new day, fresh slate, right? Yeah. I had a conversation not too long ago with a leader and I was like, oh, we made it to Friday. And she goes, actually, Mondays are my favorite day.
Wow.
Tell me more. That's exactly what I said. Tell me more. And she said, it's a clean slate. We're starting afresh. It's a whole new week. I was like, what a perspective change. And that is what you just did. We're like, look, we get a fresh, don't look at it as, well, this is all we've got. And, oh, woe is me. We got an opportunity. What you said was the hope is the opportunity, and we're all a part of that. And so that's what I heard there. Now, the funny part about that other conversation, she was like, it also means my children go back to school.
There you go.
I love my kids, but it looks very different on the weekends around here. But I think that you spoke that out really well. And what a great way for us to wrap up this part of our conversation with that is the hope that we have. We all have a part to play in. We can do better. And it is better together. Okay. Less heavy.
Okay.
Just as fun.
Right.
Let's wrap up with a few quick. Let's find out a little more who you are behind and beyond the office.
Okay.
So, long day. What's the best way for you to reset?
Exercise and walk. I would say either going for a run or I've got 2 dogs, Pickles and Murphy, and I take them outside, just being with my dogs. I'm a huge animal lover. We don't deserve dogs. They're always happy to see you, never judging you. So something either me going for a run or just loving on my pups.
Nice. Okay. Coffee, tea, or something else when it's time to pick. What is it?
Ooh, I try to stay away from caffeine because as you could probably tell, I'm wound up naturally a bit too tight. So if I do have caffeine, I try to just a little bit. But I like tea. I like iced coffee. But I'm probably more of a tea girl than a coffee girl.
Okay. All right. Love it. And then this one is definitely most important. Favorite ice cream flavor. I know you're healthy and running and all the things.
Oh, girl, chocolate. The more chocolate, the better. And it can just be plain chocolate. But it can have chocolate with chocolate bits and chocolate brownie and just all the chocolate. I'm a chocolate girl. Yes.
Oh gosh, you are like my sisters, multiple of them. I'm like, really? This is why they call it death by chocolate too much. But yes. I hear you. Absolutely. You. Katie, you have filled our minds, you have filled our cups, you have filled our hearts. You've inspired us to reach for more. You've inspired us with hope. Thank you for sharing your story. You gave us just a glimpse into your relational leadership journey, but boy, did it really pierce. Your insights and the investment that you place in others, so impactful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me, Wendy.
Well, I look forward to more conversations. And for our Cultivate collaborators, that's a wrap today. But remember, never, ever over, because each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, keep stirring things up, keep making an impact so that we can keep being better together. Thanks, everyone.
Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com.